Great talk this morning. Can you give me the 30-second summary on geoengineering? I know that's hard.
People have proposed blocking out sunlight to reverse global warming, to reduce the amount of energy on the planet. And the ideas that are most being looked at are putting a cloud in the stratosphere like volcanoes do, or brightening clouds over the ocean. There are many risks involved with these, and there's no technology today to do it. But if it would work, it might cool the planet and reverse some of the negative aspects of global warming. The solution to global warming is mitigation, reducing the greenhouse gases that are causing global warming, carbon dioxide, methane, and the others. And that's the solution. It has to be done as quickly as possible. Absent that working, then one of the things we have to do is adapt to climate change. And absent that, there'll be suffering. Now, people have talked about something called geoengineering, which is either taking the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere after we put it in. That's called carbon dioxide reduction. That's probably a good idea. It's kind of expensive now, but that's not really that controversial. The other idea is blocking out the sunlight, and this would have a lot of risks associated with it, but it should not be done as a substitute for mitigation. It should be done only if mitigation doesn't work and we're reaching some sort of dangerous climate change that we might want to reduce temporarily while we get mitigation and carbon dioxide reduction under control. No, nobody is advocating geoengineering in the absence of mitigation. It's only added on to more efficiency, more conservation, more wind and solar, and because the carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for a long time, there's still going to be a certain amount of climate change. I don't even know whether it's a good idea. There's a risk to global warming, there's a risk to doing geoengineering, and we're still in early days of comparing the risks and see whether geoengineering would be even riskier than not doing it. We couldn't do it tomorrow because we don't have the technology. So the first thing to do would be to try and build a fleet of airplanes and infrastructure producing enough sulfur so that we could go up into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, and spray sulfur out and create a cloud. We don't have the technology to do that. Some people say it's cheap and easy, but it's never been done, and so it would take a major development effort to develop the infrastructure to do that on a routine basis. The other idea is a fleet of ships in the ocean, perhaps autonomous, that would be powered by the wind and would take out seawater and turn into salt and spray salt into the clouds and making them brighter. Even if we could have a fleet of ships spraying salt into the atmosphere, we don't know if it would cool the planet. It might brighten some clouds, but it might have upward motion. You might have sinking next to it, and those clouds would evaporate, and the net effect might be more absorption of sunlight. We don't know what the pattern and the amount of salt and the types of clouds to see. That's an unanswered question. We don't know if we spray sulfur into the stratosphere, whether, rather than creating a lot of small particles, which would be effective at scattering sunlight, we might make larger particles. And instead of making more, we would make larger ones. The larger ones would be less effective at scattering sunlight and would fall out of the atmosphere faster. And you might have to do 10 times the amount that we would do if they didn't grow. And we may never even be able to put enough sulfur up to really be very effective. So those are unanswered questions, whether it's even possible. I have a list of 26 reasons why geoengineering might be a bad idea. So I'll mention a few of them. One of them is it would destroy ozone. Because there's chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere, and will be for decades to come, on the surfaces of these cloud droplets, they would release chlorine and it would destroy ozone, and we'd get more ultraviolet radiation reaching the surface. If we could cool the planet by blocking out sunlight, different parts of the planet would cool at different rates. And so you would cool the land more than the ocean, and in the summer, this temperature difference is what drives the summer monsoon. So you'd have less precipitation over India, less precipitation over China, a place where a couple billion people depend on this to grow their food. There would also be, globally average, a reduction of precipitation, because as you cool the planet, there's less evaporation from sunlight. And that would, if you heat the planet with greenhouse gases, it makes the atmosphere more stable and works against the enhanced evaporation. So balancing the temperature causes a reduction of precipitation. If you want to keep the precipitation from changing, you get warming. Also, the regional distribution of temperature change wouldn't be uniform. So if you blocked out sunlight from a cloud in the stratosphere, you would cool the tropics more than the high latitudes. If you're worried about sea level rise, about melting ice sheets, you would have to overcool the planet to cool the Arctic and the Antarctic to stop the melting.
Give me one advantage just to contrast with those two.
So if it would work, it would cool the planet. It would reduce global warming, and it would reduce a lot of the negative aspects of global warming. It would slow sea level rise, it would slow stronger storms, it would slow enhanced droughts and floods. So all the negative impacts of global warming that we're worried about, if you prevented the planet from warming, it would reduce those if it would work. Now there's another problem. What if you're doing it for a while and it seems to be working, and then there's this major drought in China or this major flood in India, and they say, oh, you damn geoengineers, you're doing this. Well, we say, you can't prove that. These are random variations that could happen anyway. I don't care, stop it. And so society might lose the will or the means to continue to do it, and the clouds in the stratosphere would fall out in a year, and you get this rapid global warming at a rate much faster than you would get if you had done nothing. And it's this rate of change which is really hard to adapt to, not just the gradual change. So the adaptation to this catastrophic rising, if you instantaneously stopped it, would be a danger. What are the ethics of geoengineering research? Should we actually be doing research? And there are some negative things about it. For example, it might take away resources from things that the planet should otherwise be doing, or it might be a path, building a path to implementation. But I think because we already know about it, we really have to do research so that we can learn what the risks are. And sometime in the future, if there's dangerous climate change, policymakers can actually make an informed decision rather than just panicking and doing it. So we have to be able to evaluate the risks, and that's the advantage of doing the research. How do we decide? What if countries in the north want it a little bit warmer to take the resources out of the Arctic, and islands in the Pacific that are already drowning want it cooler? How do we decide that? What if there's a big multinational corporation, a geoengineering corporation gets going? Whose interest would they have at heart? They want to keep doing it. So I can think of another, there are unexpected consequences. What don't we know? Donald Rumsfeld was right about one thing, there's unknown unknowns. What don't we know? Will we trust the only planet we know to have life on it to this one technology? There would also be unexpected benefits. But so there's a lot of, what about the moral hazard? What if people think that geoengineering is going to solve the problem of global warming? There'd be less push to do mitigation. It might work the other way though. If people find out about geoengineering and say, you want to do this crazy thing? Maybe it's a real problem. Maybe we should really worry about the problem so we don't have to do this. So those are issues that people are looking at too.
Okay. Cool.